Welcome back everyone to the Scene That Changed series. It's been a good long while since we've done one of these, but I wanted to bring it back and prioritize some of the very best scenes in animation. I've heard this series being described as my premium series, and I agree. Some of the videos I'm most proud of come from this category here. And what better way to kick back into the swing of things than with yet another heart-wrenching Pixar classic of a scene. We've previously covered Toy Story 4 and Toy Story 3, but let's get back to one of my childhood firsts. With probably the first scene I saw in movies that made me feel that sympathetic sadness. Probably. And of course, what else could be the most heart-wrenching scene in Toy Story 2? The father scene? No. And though the ASMR scene is tempting as a little bubble of iconic Toy Story imagery, I think it has to be the moment we learn about Jessie's backstory. Exploring an obvious yet unthought of concept for the world of toys, how do they react to being abandoned? And it actually begins a little sooner than the first crossfade, as all good emotional scenes actually begin with a quirky montage of photo shooting toy poses, of course. All to bring us back to the world of the Roundup gang now that the B-plot? I don't know which it is. Now that the other plot has reached the end of its scene. Anyway, at this point of the movie, Woody has been kidnapped into this position, he's met the rest of the gang and learned of his own identity. But of course has been lingering on the fact that he still wants to run away and return to Andy. Rising tensions with Jessie specifically here, as the last time we saw them, they were a little at odds at each other. That still didn't resolve anything, as Woody still came out of it claiming that as soon as his severed arm is fixed,
I'm out of here.
Just with a little guilt tripping afterwards. Also, crazy that in the second story of Toys, they go to tackle the themes of dismemberment and disability to a certain extent. And only 27 years later, they choose to cover technology? Anyway, said reassemblement has occurred, and Woody is now a new man.
Great, now you can go.
And we kick right back into our central conflict, as Jessie is still on terrible terms with Woody right as he's achieved his first goal of being fixed. Narratively, we're now at that awkward phase of some arcs being met, whilst others are still sore and raw, as she storms off in silence with Woody holding to his resolve.
Well, what a good idea.
They've not been getting on for a long time, and this isn't some perfect leader Woody who has to be friends with everybody he meets. He's flawed and willing to be mean at times, especially if they disagree with some of his core values. Whilst at the same time, he's not heartless. And there's a little bit of hesitation in there even before things kick off when looking at the vent exit. He'd be letting these people down, and particularly feels that with the voiceless Bullseye. And then there's Pete.
Don't be mad at Jessie. She's been through more than you know.
Seemingly the mediator of this group dynamic, and the sensible one against the sad one and the mad one. But it's starting to open us up more to the heart and depth within these plastic characters, implying that there's more to the story than just selfish desires. Instead, striking up a diplomatic deal.
Why not make amends before you leave, huh?
It's tiny lines like this that I don't remember as a kid, but are so strong to hear again as an adult. Making amends instead of instantly dashing towards the next open plot point just makes a story that much more enriching rather than simply a journey from point A to point B. And the silence around this moment just shows how thoughtful Woody is being at this point of arguable selfishness. He's taking it all to heart and taking in his surroundings. It's a bittersweet choice he wants to make.
It's the least you can do.
Gotta love, by the way, a focus pull in digital animation. It may only be 1999, but they're constantly replicating camera techniques in their animation engine, which is still impressive. And even Woody's knee-jerk reaction to this idea isn't an immediate yes or no, but shares so much of his personality.
All right, but I don't know what good it'll do.
He can be frustrated and annoyed just like anybody else because he's written like a flawed and real person. He doesn't react perfectly to someone who conflicts with him like this, and it makes all of these characters in this film so much more real. And he's not even meant to be the focus of this scene. I just love the classic Pixar writing.
Hey, what you doing way up here?
Even just the instrumental licks in this soundtrack are so good in this franchise. But anyway, we've now got some compositional dividing as Woody climbs up this chair, physically severed from Jessie's position as the camera goes low angle to emphasize their heights and wide to showcase them as small. Neither character is exactly holding dominance in this scene, since both of them are on a back foot of sorts. Two small characters in an overwhelming world, One clambers up with resolve, and the other settles down in defeat right now.
Get one last look at the sun before I get packed away again.
Man, that's such a wild concept to think about in-universe. There are characters that are literally forced to never see the sun again for years on end, potentially. No wonder it's to be a PTSD-style phobia of Jessie's, because it's dark to think about. Anyway, at this new angle, we can see the two compositionally getting a hint closer, with Jessie lit on the setting sun to highlight her a little bit more. Her face visible only in reflection so that we can still see her while she can still act hidden. And what's interesting on the reverse shot is that Jessie is extra hidden here. It's not all of her in the frame, and it's a little jarring on her, almost wrong. And it's because this isn't a back and forth conversation. Woody seemingly is all Liz on her shot, ready to take a diplomatic approach, but Jessie has no intention of listening back. She's closing off and barricading him further behind that armchair on his shot. They don't really see eye to eye. And it's clear from their actual points, as Woody is not at all trying to compromise or understand. He's simply reiterating why he is right on his concrete decision. There's no accountability here or nuanced perspective, and so of course, it crashes in the middle.
Well, if you knew him, you'd understand. You see, Andy's
Let me guess.
Jessie doesn't want to hear it even. Full on interrupting from a position of already knowing. It's not that she needs to have his choice explained, she has all the pieces together. More so than Woody as far as she's concerned.
Andy's a real special kid.
And as we cut back to her filling in the gaps for him, now the shot is closer. Woody's out of the shot as she continues to go along because he's no longer a part of the picture. It's not about whether or not he's listening. In fact, from Jessie's perspective, it probably doesn't even matter to her if he is. Woody's no longer a part of the frame because Woody and Andy is no longer what the conversation is even about.
Even though you're not moving, you feel like you're alive.
Jessie's very much reflective on the thoughts and experiences of her own kid, in her own little closed-off angle, far more intimate than the camera and audience have been up to this point in the movie. Also, what a crazy bar in this damn movie. Acknowledging the fact that they're inanimate sometimes and commenting on the existential question of being alive? Certainly a more nuanced take than Forky in the future.
I am not a toy.
There are some shots of Woody in this dialogue, but they're silent, as he quietly soaks in the emotional words of someone he doesn't particularly care about. It says a lot about his character that he doesn't argue or butt in anymore, but she is saying the very things he would expect to say next. Maybe she does already know more than him.
Because that's how he sees you.
How did you know that?
Gotta love how the animators also manually animated the little icks and ahs in Tom Hanks' performance. That little blip at the start making his mouth go wide like that, it is a little early animation, but it's high quality attention to detail. And Jessie applying her experience to Andy as she swaps pronouns out to hims instead.
Because Emily was just the same.
But in reality, she's referring to her own kid, a girl.
She was my whole world.
Strap in, everybody, it's gonna be a lot of this. As we now transition over to a sad music montage scene cross-fading into the window. Very thematically being a sun-setting day for Jessie, as we'll soon see, but also hearing about the experience of a girl and her toys? That's new territory for a standard sequel. Presumably, not everyone will have the Andy experience, so let's get stuck in for how an alternative can go.
When somebody loved me, everything was beautiful.
Damn, what a crazy room. Those two singular horseshoes on the wall go crazy. You can tell it's 1999. Still, this room is just baked in those warm, glowy colors, as it should do to remember warm, nostalgic memories. And the lines, "when somebody loved me," is so incredibly on the nose, but also strikes right at your heartstrings.
Emotional damage.
It's a formulaic piece of the Toy Story movies so far, and if last time we learned that Buzz isn't a space ranger and lost an arm, you can tell that this one's not gonna hold back either. Man, actually, Toy Story got into dismemberment right at the offset, huh?
Every hour we spent together.
Now we get to see a little bit of Emily, a classic Western fan little girl, and we never see her eyes. The brilliant Toy Story omission that typically likes to do that so that we can focus on our real protagonists at their smaller scale. And I love how, despite the fact that Jessie has not animated at all yet, you can still read the glee in her default face during playtime. Anyway, Emily's not just a casual fan, she seems to have all sorts of Jessie merch lined up, costume and hat and all, relevant for how it it doesn't matter how good you've got it.
Lives within my heart.
Oh no, she's literally a horse girl? I think that's our first red flag. Get out of there, Jessie!
Jessie!
But this montage is gonna do another consistent thing in its short runtime, and that is the transitions. It's never a cut. It's always a flow. Artsy because it's a montage? A nice flair because there's so many of them? Or is it the inevitable passing of time? Especially when witnessing childhood as a toy's kid grows up way too quickly, like parents so often say of their own child. You can take your pick. But whilst the first one was a fade in the window, this one is a mask job, cutting around Jessie's form to take us to this horse painting.
I was there to dry her tears.
As we've mask cut over to nighttime now with a homemade cowboy camp tent. They make a lot out of this one corner of a room, but it works. Jessie now a focused silhouette alongside Emily so we don't see her details and you can see her nearby merch lamp too. It's interesting how Emily seems to only care about the Jessie part of Woody's roundup. Doesn't even have bullseye for her horse. But it happens, you know, kids usually don't have the entire set and not everyone has a whole army like Andy does.
We are at Code Red. Recon Plan Charlie.
Quite literally in his case.
And when she was happy, so was I.
This one's a bit of a weird vocal delivery. Never actually noticed the words was I? But of course, it makes sense as we're now back to fading transitions over to trees. Now, I don't know how exactly they did this, but from a wordless, characterless shot, Pixar managed to perfectly capture a deep sadness from an otherwise beautifully happy shot. It's the feeling of looking up in the passenger seat of a car and staring at the trees. And like that somberness that follows. Is it from boredom, or am I just associating sad with this shot as muscle memory? Either way, it's actually happy so far as we get to witness Jessie at her highest, most gleeful point.
When she left me.
Sat in the car, holding hands with her giant kids, secretly expressing when totally unobserved. Intimately close, draped in warm tones, and content. Telling kids that they are each secretly loved by the toys they love themselves. Bloody wholesome. Oh, through the summer and the fall. Never heard the enunciation on that line until now. Maybe I had hearing issues as a kid. Maybe I just didn't know the American word for autumn yet. Anyway, we're cross-fading more now as Jessie's head is literally match cut across to the sun, literally reaching her brightest point in her life. As we tilt down to a recurring scene. It's your classic romanticized fieldly treescape. And fun fact, it's literally the same tree from A Bug's Life, but repurposed. I think this is my favorite Toy Story movie, and yet it was completed in a rush.
Like it was meant to be.
As we now crossfade to spinning in that tire, properly doing that romantic dance move POV shot as you twirl together. It's a classic, and the kind of thing seen many times in many different movies. I mean, the ones that come to my mind are Back to the Future 3 and Titanic, really a staple of those 80s and 90s romantic beats. And actually, that's an interesting point. This is, in every regard, very much a romance plot. The song, as on point as it is specifically all about love. And though it's very much the love of a toy and their child, it's matched with the same kind of bond you see in romances and couples. Not to mention, coming out of the context of Toy Story a little bit, the actual wording of the song without a toy in mind can be so very romantic. And though the song was specifically written by Randy Newman for Toy Story as a platonic, innocent kind of love, you can still interpret it beyond as more.
Lonely, I was there to comfort her.
As we next see Emily dive into a pile of leaves. We were talking about the summer and the fall, and this is very much the fall season now. Look at all those golden leaves, warm as ever, even using them as a unique transition to loop us right back to the bedroom. We've seen the full positive playback loop now. Now it's time to break our hearts.
No. Wait.
And she falls down the back of the bed the very same way Woody does in the first movie, as if it's the canon event for all toys to one day be replaced. But it's not the usual replacement job this time around. You get a hint of an idea with Emily giggling alongside some friend, but there's more to this tale. This is not just a repeat of Toy Story 1. There's not some replacement toy in a hierarchy of preference. This is just human nature, and Emily is simply aging up. You can fight the random new spaceman, but you can't fight against changing interests. and Emily's becoming a girly girl. Less tomboy cowgirl, and more makeup with friends. And Jessie can only witness. I think there's also something to be said over how Emily's selection of toys isn't really a selection. There's no gang that Jessie can go to when Emily's not around to take some solidarity with. The next shot does show a bunch of horses, but we never see them come alive. And I'd bet that even if they did, perhaps they're like Bullseye and also wouldn't talk, leaving Jessie particularly more lonely than the average toy. Hence, she never moves. Maybe it's just symbolic.
The years went by, I stayed the same.
Emily outright already replacing any toys that are on the outside, as girly makeup becomes her world even more. Edited as if Jessie's witnessing time passing in an instant, when really this must be a slow burn.
She began to drift away. I was left alone.
Okay, now this shot I want to talk a lot about. First, what a smooth transition, having Jessie physically turn to different parts of the room as it fade transitions. Great visual storytelling, but no. Let's break down some things here. First, an extended selection of Roundup merch? Cool, you got a Bullseye head and Woody's guitar, but also a Jessie-themed lunchbox, her hat, an alarm clock, and is that a magazine with Woody on the front? Whoa, we saw that earlier in the film too. And then you have the general horse vibe. Painting, books, bookends, horseshoe picture frame, and the best look of Emily we ever get. But no, it's the second version I want to talk about. Of course, narratively, Emily's garnering new interests too. And this time, it's music. It's teenagehood. And I remember people getting really held up on this poster. Lima's rock and roll concert. You can tell the vibes here. A new age interest. But what's the timeline of events here? Well, there's a date right at the bottom. 25th of November, 1999. This is false. I'm surprised this has caught people up, to be honest. It's just a reference to Toy Story 2's original release date, November 1999. Technically, it was the 24th, but what can you do? Clearly, this is a sequence now setting us in the 1970s. It's disco, it's vinyls for the first time around, it's psychedelia, it's Emily in her teens. That way, it makes sense for Jessie to be enduring many years and still reach 1999 in the present day to have her outlook against Woody. Okay? Are we on the same page now? The rest of this is brilliant too. Dance party at the county rec center, the makeup and coins still lingering, a new phone also sticking to the 70s. We haven't got that 80s brick just yet. It's all just perfect visual storytelling and not a single character in shot. Unless you count that standard photo frame of Emily posed with Princess Fiona, it seems.
When she'd say, "I..."
And what's Emily's next fixation? Boys. Hey there, thank you for making it to the halfway mark of this video. Come subscribe if you haven't already for more emotional damage. We're bringing back the scene breakdown series. It is one of my favorites. And give us suggestions for some of the best animation scenes of all time. Otherwise, I'll let you get back to the second half of the scene that changed Toy Story 2. And what's Emily's next fixation? Boys.
Brother,
The animators don't have much to play with, but even they can express a little something. Just a pair of legs, but that swinging foot tells you all you need to know. As Emily's attached to her phone for playtime instead. Wow, how modern. Those cowboy boots now gone for the sleeker standard look her friend had before. And it's kind of a POV shot from under the bed, as we only see a sliver of Emily's life, with Jessie now cast out of it. We don't get all the pieces of the picture, narratively and literally, with the bed's underbelly blocking the frame. Only a preview for us.
Always love you.
Oh man, and that's where all the Jessie merch ends up, right alongside her under the bed, with a match cut to boot as Jessie doesn't animate on the screen, relegated to her defeated rest instead. And in the very same movie we're now bringing in dust? It's the very same movie we started introducing the concept with Wheezy at the start of this film. And Woody as well getting concerned on that dusty shelf? Oh, the themes are theming right now. And it's more praise for Pixar daring to tackle particle effects. You can bet that it's not easy before the turn of the millennia. Wow, even the horseshoe frame is down here? I guess Emily fell out with her old friend. In reality, this shot is just hyper-composited. Look at that perfectly diagonal horse at the back. Definitely doesn't animate. But you've also got a rogue blue car, a binder, a mini skateboard, and a lad board game of some sort. Interesting. Anyway, with this being our fading match cut, we don't learn how long this moment lasts, but the dust is telling. It's likely years. Tragic. To introduce characters that come to life, but also never die if abandoned, is a weirdly cruel fate this universe unknowingly put upon itself. Bold of them to explore it in the very first sequel. This is the deepest pit of Jessie's backstory, and by itself would be awful.
Lonely and forgotten.
But there's an inkling of hope. A random chance one day. That memory we all have of accidentally rediscovering a toy. All it takes is an excuse to search under a bed, and for Emily, it's dropping her bag of makeup. Wow, she is die hard on the makeup thing. But it rolls to Jessie, and I love how she's not instantly optimistic. Her face on that first hit is only more sorrow, not even processing it in real time before she's kicked into inanimacy. It's so much more realistic that she's just feeling hollow from years of neglect. But then, it's the most soul-crushing detail in this whole short. There are so many little bits you might consider as the most heart-wrenching bits of this backstory, but for me, it's what Jessie does next. She gains this little bit of hope right in the middle that the animators sprinkled in there.
Never thought she'd look my way.
For the briefest second that Emily's out of frame, Jessie darts her eyes towards her. It's so small, but to me, it's so everything. A glimmer of hope at the depths of her despair. Also interesting, it's time to Emily being out of shot. I guess better framing to explain she's unobserved at this moment? I love that micro detail. As do I on the one that Emily recognizes Jessie first by the hat, and then moves more softly.
Smiled at me and held me.
We don't see Emily's reaction to seeing Jessie, but I imagine it's not exactly disgust. Likely more a welcome surprise and a wave of happy nostalgia. The kind of look that would give Jessie hope and solace for being rediscovered. Whilst it is still 70s Emily, the bedsheet's also a little hippie now.
Just like she used to do.
As we're right back to those golden trees again. Despite touching on the sad, we've never really cut away from the warm colors. Just a little darker under the bed. Maybe it's a limitation in 1999? Can't exactly do the rain opening of Toy Story 4. Or maybe it's because Jessie generally holds all of Emily's memories in this warm bubble, even if some of it came with its own darkness. At least she had a kid back then. Who knows? Anyway, the trees are the same as before. I think a more technologically advanced Toy Story would maybe show trees in a different season, less leafy as the good times have passed perhaps. But also, it's the perfect misdirect. As we're right back in the same joys of this memory's heights,
Like she loved me.
but the hints are kind of there. The first time around in the car, Jessie had direct contact with Emily's side, and this time she's in a purse. Makes sense for older Emily, but also a little less intimate than before. And look at those hands. After all these years, they're not holding hands anymore. Sunlight on the other side of the shot too. Still, Jessie feels the love, once again fading the sun over her face at her rekindled height. And so we're back to that familiar sight again. This tree getting a third time on screen now. If A Bug's Life 2 isn't happening, I guess Toy Story can dig it out again. Seemingly, we're ready to hit the highs again for this memory. Nothing looks any different anyway.
Everything was beautiful.
Well, except for the visitors, of course. With an old school wood paint car and Emily a full adult by now. This is the best look of her we get. So let's address the elephant in the room. You've heard the theory before, and I love it too. Could it be that Emily is in fact Andy's mum? I have a definitive answer for you today. Let's look at all the evidence. First, from just our eyes. Does adult Emily look a little like mum? Absolutely. Though I can't find a repeat of the flowery shirt she wears, that bob haircut is totally on point. And Andy's mum has always rocked the shorter look. Whilst at the same time, this is 1999. This could just be down to technical limitations. Look at how they handled Andy's friends in Toy Story 1. Those boys are all just clones of Andy. And Pixar hadn't mastered human work just yet, so perhaps this is just a body double for the sake of efficiency. But speaking of 1999, would the timeline even line up? Well, having already debunked the rock and roll concert date, assuming this shot in Emily is set in the 1970s, Emily would be somewhere in the mid-teens for this, putting her birthday somewhere in the 1960s. 15 in 1975, center of the disco era? Great, let's run with that. A birthday in 1960-ish puts her at 30 to 40 by the turn of the millennia. 39 if born in 1960, 30 if born in 1969, come 1999. And going on the assumption that Andy is 6 years old, that means she'd have to have had him somewhere between the age of 24 and 33, which I think lines up pretty nicely. Even if you take the extreme and say there's a 4-year time gap between Toy Story 1 and 2, putting Andy surprisingly at 10 years old by 1999, that still ages Andy's mum to 20 to 29 for becoming a parent, which I think comfortably fits. So yes, timeline-wise, it totally works. What's more, we have extra evidence. Remember that Lemurs concert? Back to it again. We see them already in this movie in another form, as they were similarly being sold at that yard sale from the start of the movie, albeit on more modern tech. You've also got one that particularly blows my mind the first time I heard it, and that was Andy's hat itself. This is not quite the Woody hat, with that little white addition around the end as well as a faded mark orbiting the whole thing. That's much more in line with a Jessie hat, and implies it could have been handed down from the time Emily had hers, since she definitely has a hat.
Pardon me, Mr. Perfect!
Oh, yeah. Sorry, heart-wrenching scene going on. I'll finish up here, but I poke on this shot here because look what merch object doesn't get put in the boxes. Emily seemingly keeps the hat. It's odd since that design for a hat was also in Toy Story 1 when Jessie very much hadn't been designed yet, but they seemingly chose not to duplicate Woody's hat for Andy back then and perhaps design Jessie's look based on Andy's bigger hat. It's a theory. Speaking of actual staffing decisions, the Pixar staff themselves have come out and made statements on the matter. So according to the sources directly, the idea that Emily could be interpreted as a young Andy's mum is one that many of the Pixar staffers may not have intended, but perhaps may have wished they had thought of. But otherwise, on the official front, this theory is confirmed to not be the case. Psych! This is art, and art is subjective. Just because the creators didn't intend it to be that way doesn't mean that you can't interpret it that way anyway. The evidence is clearly there, and it is more than enough to run with. Forget about how Jessie doesn't recognize the mum. Could be all off screen and she gets over it. Besides, if any staffer likes the theory enough, they could easily incorporate it more in the future, and we would never know. So definitively, I say yes. You can interpret art however you wish, and it lines up enough. I'm certainly going to take it as a headcanon, and I think it only enriches the universe a little bit more. We on the same page? Great. We're on the same page.
lives within my heart.
But yes, the glimmer of hope right now turns to despair, as Jessie discovers she's being properly abandoned, put to a box the likes of which we won't see for everyone else until Toy Story 3. Along with all her Jessie merch too, but seemingly not the hat, eh? And POV shotting back to another frame within a frame as Jessie only gets a preview of Emily's life again as she drives far away. Her favorite spot and her worst memory, the bad ending. As we zoom further and further away from a now caged Jessie donated to the Tri-County charity. Hey, that's the same region relevant to Andy's placement. And also seemingly the start of her fear of being packed. But at least in this box, she gets a peephole and that setting sun on her face, as we fade back to present day on another setting sun. Remember there was a whole exterior scene to this as well? And by now, everything has changed. Woody is no longer just making his claim, he's stunned, silently taking it all in. And they're much closer than they were before. Woody now literally on her level, as Jessie herself has figuratively opened up, turning the other way and looking inwards rather than out the window. It's tragic, but from this moment they've met so much closer in the middle. Apparently in test screenings this was originally a vocal explanation, and Disney wasn't sure if a slow song would lose kids' attention, but apparently they were hooked, and you can totally see why.
You never forget kids, but they forget you.
It's so weird to hear it verbally addressed so early, but it's so gut-wrenching every time. And the performance both Joan Cusack and the animators give is just top-notch. Still, this is an argument of sorts, and the conflict isn't just magically resolved now that both sides know the whole story.
Jessie, I didn't know.
Just go.
And it's not a happy bonding moment. it's still a raw memory, and Woody never responds with anything else this scene. After this, he just accepts it, thinks on it, and silently leaves. Once again, saying a lot for his character, as someone who will hear someone out and takes his emotion on the chin. Now you could argue this scene is over, but it very much lingers on in this room. Stinky Pete has a couple of prophetic lines, which is crazy to hear as early as Toy Story 2.
Do you really think Andy is going to take you to college?
Outright predicting the plot of Toy Story 3 already, as if they knew exactly what they were going to cover next. Right after hearing the ending with Emily, we poke on the future ending for Andy. So I guess running by that logic, what's the plan for Toy Story 5 if Andy has an appearance?
Or on his honeymoon?
Guess we'll pencil that in for a prediction. Speaking of Toy Story 5, very briefly, I heard an interesting explanation that it's actually a period piece. Thinking about the timeline of Toy Story movies again, if Toy Story 3 takes place in modern day 2010 and Bonnie hasn't aged too much since then Toy Story 5 is likely covering the early onset of iPad society, making the iPad story all the more thematic. I just thought that was interesting to bring up. Anyway, the point of this whole scene is also to convince Woody to consider his endgame plan, to which he comes to one. Stay with them, become a museum collectible, and
You'll be adored by children for generations.
he spends a long time thinking on it, all in this brilliant silence. And then
Who am I to break up the Roundup gang?
nothing like trauma dumping to guilt trip a stranger into giving you what you want. But in reality, this is the most impactful scene in the movie, if not the franchise as a whole. From here, things get complicated. The museum plan is scrapped, they go through an airport luggage system, Jessie is adopted into the Andy family, look how happy she is.
We're part of a family again!
Toys leave as Andy does grow up, they all think they're being binned, they run away to daycare, escape from daycare, are given away by Andy, adopted over to Bonnie, adventure over to a fun fair, and eventually say goodbye to Woody. Jessie becomes the new sheriff and a tablet arrives at their door, how scary. But look at all the memories and joy Jessie has along the way. Gone are the times of her tragic backstory. Jessie does get a happy ending eventually. What a relief. You can dry your eyes now. Pixar always swings hard when it comes to emotional moments, and I think this is one of Pixar's best of all time. A pitch for a Toy Story sequel at all can be hard, as there could have easily been pushback to try to recreate a masterpiece. But a scene like this absolutely cements its place in Pixar gold. Literally, Sarah McLachlan and Randy Newman would both go on to say that When She Loved Me would be one of the highlights of both of their music careers, and I cannot contest that. The music is so heartfelt and soft that it just perfectly hits you right where it wants to.
When she loved me.
No more.
I'm sorry. My brain keeps playing these two songs together in my head, so I had to share it with you. That Randy Newman melody all blends together, from boy despair to girl despair. And I love that they chose to give that sad montage to a non-core cast member this time. Great spin. And with this song in particular, you could really extrapolate it with some of the word choices in mind, because the lyrics know this is about a girl, and the vocals were specifically requested to be performed by a female singer too. So, to a certain extent, you could take on this song as a love story between two girls drifting apart. Unintentional as it may be, it's solid to see in the mainstream. Or you could, of course, as some have said, see it as a parable to parents afraid of the looming abandonment from their own children for the day they inevitably grow up and don't want to play with them anymore. Beautifully tragic and universally personal, whatever your spin. But I've been talking about this scene way beyond my usual fare. I just have so much to say about one of Pixar's greatest scenes, but I shall finally put a pin in it there. That was the scene that changed Toy Story 2. My name's been Daz. Thank you very much for reaching the end of this video. Do tell me your thoughts about this scene. I'd love to hear all of your thoughts and more, and any more dissections of Toy Story 2. Give us suggestions to future scene breakdowns if you'd like, and I shall see you all in a little bit. Cheerio!